$380 billion. That's more than the entire GDP of most countries. It's more than NASA's budget for the next 15 years. It's enough money to build 76 new aircraft carriers. And it's the staggering amount that's been pledged in what might be the largest military deal in modern history. Yet most people have no idea what it actually means. We are talking about the Ukraine military aid packages, the deal that's reshaping global defense spending, rewriting military strategy, and fundamentally changing how wars are fought in the 21st century. But here's the thing. While everyone's arguing about the headlines, almost nobody understands what's actually happening behind the scenes. This isn't just about one conflict or one country. We're witnessing the birth of a completely new form of international relations. One where military aid, economic warfare, and cutting-edge technology combine to create unprecedented global influence. And implications go far beyond anything you've heard in the mainstream media. Today, we're going deep into the military deal that everyone's talking about but few truly understand. From the hidden economics that make the deal profitable for donor countries, to the revolutionary weapon systems being deployed in real combat, to the geopolitical chess game that's redefining global power structures for the next century. We are Project Aerospace, and if you want to understand the stories behind the headlines, hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell, because what we are about to show you will completely change how you think about modern military aid, international relations, and the future of warfare itself. Let's start with the numbers that will absolutely blow your mind. When people hear military aid to Ukraine, they think it's just the United States writing checks. But the reality is far more complex, far more massive, and far more strategic than anyone realizes. The United States has provided over $67 billion in bilateral aid as of 2024, making it the largest single contributor. But here's what most people miss. This isn't charity. This is business, and it's business that's driving one of the largest military-industrial booms in decades. Most of this aid isn't cash being shipped overseas. It's actually old U.S. military equipment being valued at replacement cost, then sent to Ukraine while American factories work overtime producing newer, better equipment for the U.S. military. It's essentially the largest military equipment refresh program in history, disguised as foreign aid. But the U.S. is just the tip of the iceberg. The European Union has pledged over 40 billion euros for the next year alone, with Germany overturning decades of policy against providing offensive weapons. Countries like Sweden and Finland, historically neutral nations that avoided military engagements for centuries, are now major military suppliers. Here's where it gets truly staggering. The EU and the G7 partners have agreed to collectively provide loans of $50 billion financed by extraordinary revenues from immobilized Russian assets. Think about that for a moment. They're using frozen Russian money to buy weapons to fight Russia. It's financial warfare at its most sophisticated level. But even these numbers don't tell the full story. When you add indirect costs, training programs, intelligence sharing, logistics support, refugee assistance, and economic stabilization, the real figure approaches $500 billion. We're looking at expenditures that rival the entire Marshall Plan adjusted for inflation, happening in real time. Now here's where it gets really interesting, and where most people, including many politicians and journalists, completely miss the point. This isn't just aid. It's the largest stimulus package for the defense industry in generations, and it's restructuring entire national economies. When the U.S. announces a $2 billion aid package, that money doesn't leave the American economy. It goes directly to American defense contractors like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, General Dynamics, and Boeing. These companies then hire thousands of workers, build new factories, and develop next-generation weapon systems. Let me give you some specific examples that will blow your mind. Lockheed Martin's Javelin anti-tank missile production has increased by over 500%. They've hired 3,000 new workers just for this program. Raytheon is building entirely new factories to meet Stinger missile demand, investing $2 billion in domestic production capacity. General Dynamics is expanding artillery shell production to levels not seen since World War II. They're literally dusting off production techniques from the 1940s while simultaneously developing AI-guided munitions. It's like watching the military-industrial complex time travel while innovating at breakneck speed. But here's the kicker, and this is crucial to understand. While we're sending older equipment overseas, American factories are producing cutting-edge replacements. The U.S. military is getting brand-new F-35 Lightning II fighters, upgraded Patriot PAC-3 systems, and next-generation M1A2 Abrams tanks while clearing out old inventory. It's like trading in your 2015 car to a dealer Who pays you full retail price for it while you drive off with a 2025 model loaded with every possible upgrade? Except we're talking about billion-dollar weapon systems instead of cars. European countries are experiencing the same economic phenomenon, but on an even more dramatic scale. Germany's defense spending has increased by over 40% since 2022, creating hundreds of thousands of jobs. The UK, France, and other NATO members are modernizing their entire military infrastructures using Ukraine aid as the primary justification. The result? The global defense market is experiencing unprecedented growth. Defense stocks have outperformed the broader market by massive margins, some companies seeing 200 to 300% gains. Military technology development cycles that used to take decades are now happening in months. But the deal isn't just about money. It's about fundamentally changing how wars are fought. And Ukraine has become the world's largest testing ground for 21st century military technology. The results are reshaping military doctrine globally in ways that will define conflict for the next 50 years. Take the ATA-CMS missiles that were provided in 2024, precision weapons that can strike targets nearly 200 miles away with accuracy measured in feet, not miles. These aren't just weapons. They're game changers that have forced Russia to move critical infrastructure hundreds of miles away from the front lines, fundamentally altering the strategic landscape. But the real revolution is happening with autonomous systems. Ukraine's defense ministry announced a new initiative called the Drone Line Project, a $540 million program aimed at integrating unmanned aerial systems into frontline operations. This isn't just about having drones, it's about creating an entirely new form of warfare. We're witnessing the birth of artificial intelligence in real time, autonomous systems making split-second targeting decisions, swarm technologies where hundreds of small drones coordinate complex attacks, electronic warfare systems that can shut down entire enemy networks while maintaining friendly communications. Let us give you specific examples of technology that sounds like science fiction, but is happening right now. Ukraine is deploying AI-powered kamikaze drones that can identify and engage targets without human intervention. They're using machine learning algorithms to predict Russian artillery patterns and automatically redirect counter-battery fire. Even more shocking, they're integrating civilian technology like Starlink satellites with military command systems, creating unprecedented battlefield awareness. Commercial AI software is being used to analyze satellite imagery and identify targets faster than human analysts ever could. Countries around the world are watching these developments and rapidly adapting. China is studying Ukrainian drone tactics for potential Taiwan scenarios. Iran is reverse engineering captured Western technology for proxy conflicts. Even smaller nations are realizing that relatively cheap drone technology can neutralize expensive traditional weapon systems. The most shocking part? Much of this technology is being developed in real time, tested in actual combat conditions, refined based on battlefield feedback, and then sold to allies worldwide. Ukraine isn't just receiving aid. It's becoming a military technology laboratory that's generating billions in future arms sales and fundamentally changing military procurement processes. Now let's talk about the real reason this deal matters. It's not just about one conflict or even one region. It's about reshaping the entire security architecture for the next century. And the implications are staggering. NATO's minimum baseline funding of 40 billion euros isn't just for Ukraine. It's a fundamental shift in how Western nations approach collective defense. Countries that spent decades avoiding military buildups and focusing on social spending are now racing to modernize their forces at unprecedented speeds. Sweden and Finland joining NATO represents more than just two new members. It adds 1,700 miles of new Russian border to the alliance, along with some of the world's most advanced military technologies. Sweden's Gripen fighter jets, Finland's artillery expertise, and both countries' cyber warfare capabilities are now fully integrated into Western defense planning. But here's what most geopolitical analysis completely misses. This deal is also fundamentally about containing China. Every dollar spent strengthening European defense is a dollar that allows the U.S. to pivot to the Pacific. Every European factory producing artillery shells is industrial capacity that can be redirected to Pacific operations if needed. The Biden administration's final $500 million aid package wasn't just about Ukraine. It was about ensuring continuity regardless of the political changes in Washington. The Trump administration's decision to boost immediate military aid deliveries shows this transcends normal party politics and represents a fundamental shift in American grand strategy. We're witnessing the creation of what military strategists call interoperable defense ecosystems. American F-16s working seamlessly with European air defense systems, shared intelligence networks, providing real-time battlefield awareness across multiple continents, coordinate production schedules, ensuring ammunition compatibility across dozens of countries. But the implications go even deeper. The aid system is creating permanent defense relationships that will outlast any individual conflict. Countries that have never cooperated militarily are now sharing classified technologies, joint training programs, and integrated command structures. Poland has become Europe's military powerhouse almost overnight, with defense spending approaching 4% of GDP, twice NATO's official target. Germany has completely reversed 80 years of pacifist policy, not just symbolically, but with massive concrete investments in military capability. These aren't temporary wartime measures, they're permanent shifts that will define European security for generations. But every massive deal has unintended consequences, and this one is creating ripple effects across the global economy and international systems that few people anticipated. And some of them are genuinely concerning. Artillery shell production worldwide has increased by over 400%, but it is still nowhere near enough to meet current demand. The rate of ammunition consumption in modern conflicts has completely shocked military planners who base their calculations on short, decisive conflicts rather than prolonged attritional warfare. Some NATO estimates suggest that current global production could be completely depleted in just 6 to 8 weeks of high-intensity conflict. This realization has triggered what can only be described as a global arms race in manufacturing capacity, not just weapons, but the industrial infrastructure to produce weapons. Countries that never considered themselves military powers are now building defense manufacturing capabilities. South Korea has become one of the world's largest arms exporters almost overnight. Japan is reversing constitutional restrictions on weapons exports. Even traditionally neutral Switzerland is expanding military production capabilities and loosening export restrictions. But here's the genuinely concerning part. As military aid becomes normalized and routine, the threshold for direct conflict involvement is steadily lowering. Countries that never would have considered providing offensive weapons are now routinely supplying advanced missile systems, electronic warfare equipment, and even training personnel. The precedent being set is that economic powers can fight full-scale proxy conflicts through equipment transfers while technically avoiding direct military confrontation. It's changing the fundamental rules of international relations in ways we're only beginning to understand, and it's happening faster than international law can adapt. There's another aspect of this deal that most people completely overlook: the revolutionary use of economic warfare tools that are redefining how nations project power without firing a shot. The seizure and use of frozen Russian assets to finance military aid represents a fundamental shift in international finance. We're talking about $280 billion in frozen central bank reserves, plus countless billions in oligarch assets, being weaponized as funding mechanisms for military operations. This isn't just about Russia, it's establishing precedents on how any country's assets can be frozen, seized, and repurposed for geopolitical objectives. China, Iran, North Korea, and dozens of other countries are now preparing for scenarios where their international assets could be weaponized against them. The SWIFT banking exclusions, semiconductor export controls, and technology transfer restrictions are creating parallel economic systems. Countries are developing alternative payment networks, supply chains, and technology ecosystems specifically to avoid Western economic leverage. We're witnessing the emergence of economic blocs that mirror military alliances, where trade relationships, financial systems, and technology access are determined by geopolitical alignment rather than pure economic efficiency. So where does all this lead? The military deal everyone's talking about isn't just about current conflicts, it's laying the groundwork for how future conflicts will be fought, funded, and won. And the implications are staggering. The success of crowdsourced military aid, the normalization of advanced weapons transfers, and the integration of civilian technology into military systems are creating an entirely new model of warfare. Future conflicts will likely see near-instantaneous technology transfers, real-time weapons development, and unprecedented levels of international involvement. Military planners worldwide are already preparing for conflicts where artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, space-based assets, and civilian infrastructure are primary battlegrounds. The lessons learned from the current aid programs are being incorporated into defense strategies from the Pentagon to the Kremlin to Beijing. But perhaps most importantly, this deal has demonstrated that economic warfare can be just as decisive as military action. The coordinated use of frozen assets, sanctions regimes, and financial system exclusions represent a new form of international conflict that's more subtle and potentially more devastating than traditional warfare. Countries worldwide are now preparing for scenarios where their economic assets could be frozen, their supply chains could be weaponized, their currencies could be excluded from international systems, and their technology sectors could be completely isolated from global markets. The next decade will likely see the emergence of completely parallel international systems, separate payment networks, alternative supply chains, redundant technology ecosystems, as nations prepare for economic warfare scenarios that seemed impossible just a few years ago. The military deal everyone's talking about, the massive aid packages, weapons transfers, and financial commitments totaling nearly $500 billion represents far more than most people understand. It's not just about one conflict, one region, or even one type of warfare. We're witnessing the emergence of an entirely new form of international relations where military aid, economic warfare, technological development, and industrial policy are intertwined in unprecedented ways. The decisions being made today about weapons transfers, defense spending, and economic sanctions will shape global security, economic systems, and technological development for decades to come. If this deep dive completely changed how you think about military aid and international relations, smash that like button and subscribe for more analysis that goes far beyond surface-level headlines. What aspect of modern military deals or economic warfare would you like to see explored next? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And remember, every time you see military aid mentioned in the news, you're not just seeing charity or politics. You're witnessing the reshaping of global power structures, economic systems, and the fundamental rules of international relations, $1 billion deal at a time. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and never accept simple explanations for complex realities. This is Christopher Wales for Project Aerospace signing off.